Guarded by Lord, sent on the shot clock. Now gets a switch with Wagstaff. This, I reckon, is going up.
Oh!
And it's called. He's got it!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. In today's video, another scouting report here on a 2022 NBA draft prospect. Seems like the last one was fairly well received. Of course, that was on Ron Harper Jr., the forward/guard from Rutgers. So if you haven't checked that out, I'll put a card in today's video for that one, so you can make sure to check it out after today's scouting report on another player that I do really like to watch, and I think is a very intriguing grab for a team, specifically in this year's draft, based on what I think he can bring to the NBA. I think he's a very NBA ready player, and a player that a lot of people don't really know. So I'm really excited to be sharing him with you. For those that have been watching the channel, you're going to know that I am very high on this kid. I think he's going to be a very nice player in the NBA. And I think I have him on my big board way higher than everyone else. I think everyone else is going to catch up to me, though, as we get actually closer to the NBA draft. This is one of those players I think I'm way ahead on. And I think I'm going to be very right, just like I was last year with another player who played in that league. So let's go ahead here now and jump into it. Again, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure to leave a like. Also subscribe. If you are new, it would mean a lot to us. Hit that notification bell for more. And the player today is Hugo Besson, the guard from the New Zealand Breakers. Again, I'm very excited about this kid. So we're going to be doing a Hugo Besson scouting profile. Make sure to take a time right now. I'm going to give you 1 second. Go comment which player you would like to see next from this next draft class. We'll talk about why they could be a very intriguing grab as well. But Hugo Besson is the player we're focusing on today. So make sure to go comment right now. And let's get into it here, starting with the player profile outline again. So we're going to talk about what we're going to break down in today's video. Started off with some player information. You know, it's important that you know who this player is. I want my viewers to know exactly what they're going to get in a player like Hugo Besson. You know, the physicals, where he plays, stats, all that kind of stuff. All the essential stuff to know when you're looking at a player. Then the strengths, the areas where he's going to help an NBA roster. And I think there's a few really pivotal ones here today for Hugo Besson from New Zealand. Then you look at the weaknesses as well. What does Hugo Besson not do well? Where is he going to have to develop? Where is an NBA team going to have to maybe hide him, help him out? We'll see in this video. Player archetype, one that I actually really do like to put into this video, because it gives you kind of an idea on how a team could use him, where his MO is going to be in the NBA, expected draft range, and also where I would take him. So we're going to get a comparison here between where I think he probably will go. And again, I'm ahead on this. I'm projecting that he's going to go higher than where everyone else is projecting right now, because I don't think that he's gotten enough exposure. And that's one of those things you see with these overseas prospects. They usually don't get the exposure that they deserve until much later in the draft process. We saw it last year with Josh Giddey. And I think, again, this year, it's happening with Hugo Besson. I think it's potentially happening with Ousmane Dieng, his teammate there for the New Zealand Breakers. So maybe we'll cover Ousmane Dieng in a future scouting profile. Let's go ahead here now and start off with Hugo Besson's information. He's a guard for the New Zealand Breakers. He's played a little bit of point guard, a little bit of shooting guard. Stands at 6'5" with a weight of 195 pounds and a 6'5" wingspan. So he's not super lengthy, but he's got good requisite size for the NBA. He's not going to be small by any means. You look at him as a French-born player. He's played already 4 years professionally, so he has quite a bit of professional experience. He's 20 years old as of right now, so he's been playing since he was 16, and he turns 21 on April 26th. So he's not some young spry chicken like many would guess he is, since he's an overseas prospect. But I think he is very ready to come into the NBA and make an immediate impact. Season stats this year: he's averaging 14.5 points a game, over 2 assists a game, 4 rebounds a game, and also shooting 40% from the field and 32.5% from 3. And for anyone who knows anything about young players playing overseas, these are actually really good statistics. Most players do not put up 10 points a game, even in an overseas situation, because they're not really in a spot where they are trusted. That is not the case here for Hugo Besson. He's actually started a majority of his team's games, I believe about 85% of them. And the team really trusts him and relies on him. He has made a ton of big shots this year for New Zealand. And the Breakers are way better when he's on the floor. So I think Hugo Besson is one of those interesting players, kind of like what we saw with Luka Doncic, where not only was he impactful, but arguably the best player on his team overseas. Now, I don't think Hugo Besson's to the level of Luka Doncic. He wasn't, going to win EuroLeague MVP or anything like that here. With Hugo Besson was not at that level. But I do think he is still having a very good season, which is tough to do when you're a young guy playing overseas. They tend to trust the veterans. However, Hugo Besson has really carved out a nice role for himself playing in the NBL. Let's go ahead and move forward here now to his first strength I want to talk about, and it's specifically his three-point shooting. I know the percentage said 32.5% from three. I don't care. This kid takes a ton of tough shots. And the one thing about him is he is going to be a phenomenal movement shooter. He is so able to move off of screens. He's going to be an offensive mastermind when it comes to running off screens, catching the ball, and firing. He's a player you're going to have to guard 27 feet away from the hoop, and if you don't, he's going to make you pay. He's got phenomenal deep range on his jump shot. He's really one of those players that when he walks into the gym, he's in range. He's got that in the gym type of range, and he's going to be deadly as a marksman in the NBA. Leave him open at your own peril. He's going to have a very nice career as a three-point shooter. I believe he's going to make a ton of threes throughout his NBA career. And he's going to be one of those players that a ton of teams are always looking for, trying to add, because he has such a desired skill set in the NBA where he can fit phenomenally around star players simply because of how much attention he's going to draw as a shooter. You think about what Duncan Robinson does for the Miami Heat. You know, even with that offense, with how much they struggle from time to time, imagine their offense without Duncan Robinson. He at least draws attention 27 to 30 feet away from the hoop. No one else on that offense really does that to that level. So you look at Hugo Besson here as an example of that, where I think he's going to be a player who, once he's in the NBA, a lot of teams, you know, have him on the scouting report, not only defensively saying, oh my goodness, we have to make sure we have a hand up on this guy at all times, otherwise he's going to make us pay, but also during the off seasons when player movements, you know, at the peak of its powers, teams are going to say, how do we get a player like Hugo Besson? How do we get Hugo Besson? Is it possible to add someone like him to our offense? Because he is going to help things go. And specifically his three-point shooting, he's able to do it off the bounce, which is really what makes him special here. He's not only going to just catch and shoot. And this is one of the issues here. People, you know, look at Robert Covington as a really good 3-and-D type player. The issue with a guy like Robert Covington is he's not a movement shooter. He's a catch and shoot guy, where Hugo Besson, if you have him catch and shoot all day long, he's going to shoot a phenomenal percentage. If you have him catching on the move, he's going to shoot a good percentage, and he can also shoot it off the bounce. So he's got all three areas of talent that you need to be a good three-point shooter. Look at Steph Curry. You know, everyone here, I think, would agree that Steph Curry is probably a better shooter than Klay Thompson. Now, if you're looking for a catch and shoot guy, Klay's better. But what Steph can do off the ball in terms of movement and shooting capabilities off the bounce, Hugo Besson emulates that to a certain degree. Of course, he's not Steph Curry. No one else is ever going to be Steph Curry ever, okay? I'm not saying that he's going to be a multi-time MVP. I'm not saying anything like that. What I'm saying, though, is his offensive capabilities as a shooter are very similar to what Steph Curry's been able to do to a lesser extent, because he's going to be able to catch it off the move and put it up and knock it down. He's going to be able to catch standing still, knock it down. And he's also able to shoot it off the bounce in the pick and roll. And that's really what I like about him. And it's going to move us here to his second string, one that I think really does, you know, really elevate what this player could be for me. If he was just a catch and shoot guy or just a movement shooter, probably would look at him differently. But actually this year, it's been huge for him in with the New Zealand Breakers in the NBL. He's really showcased a lot of off-dribble attack type of skill sets. He's been able to operate in the pick and roll, which is one of the big questions I had for him coming in this season. Has he progressed as a playmaker and as someone who can finish around the rim? Because you think about the best players in the NBA, I know a lot of the time shooting stands out. The best players in the league can get to the rim and finish. And Hugo Besson's taken a massive step forward in this regard. Specifically this season, you see he's a lot more comfortable dribbling the ball in the pick and roll, getting into the chest of a defender and finishing around the rim. I think that was one of the big areas for him to actually improve this year, and he did it. He's much better this season than he was last year when he was still playing overseas in France. And I think the transition to the NBL has been huge for him. And you want to compare a player from the NBL and say, do the NBL players really work? Well, look at LaMelo Ball and Josh Giddey. Those are two players who were guards in the NBL. And arguably here, you could say that Hugo Besson's having a better season than they had. Jae'Sean Tate was another NBL player who's transitioned fairly well to the NBA. The NBL is making a case to being the second best league in the world. You know, the EuroLeague has always been considered one of the best. The NBL has really immensely improved what their product is. And I think players coming from the NBL do have a really good track record up to this point in a short amount of time, just given the fact that there's, you know, 3 starting level players in the league right now from the NBL within the last 3 seasons. So just the fact that we have players coming from the NBL makes me believe that this is good competition, because other players have come in and have really succeeded at the NBA level. And I don't think this is going to be any different from Hugo Besson. The other thing about Hugo Besson here is he also has great shot creation potential and upside, which is another question for me. How much can he do off the bounce? And again, he's really improved this season. You see the opener of today's video, you probably saw him break down big and then hit a step back jumper. He's really added that to his game to go along with his elite range. One thing I would like to see from him a little bit more is operating into the mid-range area. You know how much I really do like guys who can score at all 3 levels. And right now I would say that he's probably a little bit more of a 2-level scorer, doesn't shoot a lot of mid-range jump shots right now. But I do think that's an easy fix. I think he has the skill set to do it. It's all about just getting the reps in and getting that, wired into his brain that, hey, this is a good shot. This is the shot I want to take if it's open here against drop coverage. And he's going to be able to do that. So for me, with Hugo Besson, the off the dribble stuff is really what adds to his skill set, because not only can he catch the ball on the 3-point line and knock it down, but he's also going to be able to make some stuff happen once he catches it, if there's a good closeout and if he's contested out there, which brings us into the final strength I have for him here, which is the fact that he's a chess piece offensively. For any coach that wants to run offensive sets or when you really need a bucket, Hugo Besson's the perfect player to have on the floor, given the fact, I'm going to show you clips here in succession that show how capable he is of being a nice offensive piece for a team, because you can run so many different looks off of one motion, off of one movement. He's very adept at getting to his spots on the floor, and he's really good at curling off screens if you want him to. He can catch on the perimeter and make something happen. He's much better attacking right than he is left at this point, but I think that the left hand is coming along. You've seen it in a couple clips already. And going to his right, he is very dangerous as a playmaker, and also someone who can get to the rim, which is really where I had talked about earlier. He's immensely improved in that area. Again, look at these clips. He's starting from the left corner here, comes up the floor off of a pin down screen, is able to catch and knock it down here in the first clip. And then as we move into the second clip here, you look at, again, same motion here. You're going to get a pin down screen, and he's able to rise up, knock it down. And then another one here, he catches again from the left corner. And at this spot, you see he catches the ball and is able to attack, to get downhill to the rim. Again, this is just simple motion offense. You're getting a little simple motion off the backside in a pin down screen, and he's turning it into buckets. So a player like him, adding him into the fold, gives your offense a lot more legs than it would have had without him. And I think offensively, if you want to have an offense that's going to be successful, especially come playoff time where, the game slows down, you need to get good looks in the half court, Hugo Besson's a phenomenal addition for me. And as someone who was a high school basketball coach and still is, with hopes of coaching at a higher level, for me, if I was the coach of an NBA team right now, Hugo Besson, I would have multiple circles around his name. I'd have him underlined. I'd have him highlighted. This is the type of player I want on my team. Someone who's willing to do the dirty work off ball by being, a motion type player where he runs around a lot, makes life difficult for the guy guarding him, and gives legs to your offense. Because sometimes when your offense stalls out, it takes you out of games. I know a lot of people say, oh, defense wins championships. To a degree, yes, but you also need to be able to score the basketball. And if you can't score the basketball, you're not going to win. It makes transition defense way more difficult. It makes, your team morale go way down. If you miss 7 straight shots, it's really hard to, work up the energy to say, okay, let's lock in defensively here now. No, when you knock down jump shots, when you get going offensively, it does really fuel a team to play good defense as well. I am in that camp that thinks, those two things are not disconnected from each other. You can't be a great defensive team and a bad offensive team. You can't be a great offensive team and a bad defensive team. I just don't think that those things really work out. You need to have a little bit of both here. And if you're a team looking for offensive punch, which I think a lot of teams in the NBA should be considering right now, Hugo Besson's a phenomenal addition for any team in the NBA. I think he's going to be a really nice player and a really nice fit for a lot of teams. Now, we're going to get to his weaknesses here, because he is definitely not without weakness. His defensive technique is rather lackluster. The nice thing here about this is something you can coach. I think his footwork is fairly questionable. He results in putting his hands on guys a lot on the perimeter. He's going to get into foul trouble pretty quickly early on, because the NBA speed and quickness, I think it's going to be a lot for him right away, specifically because, again, he doesn't use his footwork the way that he needs to. In our last scouting profile, we saw Ron Harper Jr., who is one of the best defensive tacticians and technicians because of how he uses his feet. He gets to his spots and beats people to where they want to go first. Hugo Besson does not do that at all. Luckily, you can coach this up a little bit, get him down in a stance a little bit more frequently, teach him how to really reach with that outside foot when trying to get to a spot, and hopefully he can progress here. I don't think he's ever going to be a great defensive player, but if you can at least get him to a spot where he's a solid team defender, that's a huge plus. And I mean, right now in the NBA too, for an 82 game season, you don't only play great defensive players. A lot of the time, a guy with great offensive skill set and so defensive capabilities are considered all NBA players. Look at Trae Young. Now, I don't think that Hugo Besson is going to be Trae Young, but what I do think is you can live with a player who is a little bit of a minus defensively early in his career, maybe at some point can at least become a net neutral defensively, which is the hope here. But technically, right now, he's not very sound. So you're going to have to do a little bit of work with coaching and development. But at this point, I think he's going to be someone who is willing to do that because he is highly competitive, wants the most out of himself. We saw his struggles with the NBL a little bit earlier on because it is a little bit of a quicker league than what he was accustomed to in France. But for me, I think that he does have some potential here to get better, but never going to be a really good defensive player. And then the last one here, another weakness for him is the athletic profile. And we could even include his frame into this. Again, 6'5", not bad for a guard in terms of height, but he does not have a very big wingspan, only at about 6'5" wingspan. So usually, a 6'5" player in the NBA would probably have a 6'7", 6'8", maybe even 6'9" wingspan. So we see is a little bit stockier and shorter than not shorter, but less length than you would typically see in the NBA for someone with his height. And then he's also a little wiry yet, even at 195 pounds. A lot of that's a little bit more baby fat, not quite the most defined or toned player yet. So I think he could probably put on 5, 10, 15 pounds of muscle early into his career. And I think that's going to sharpen his game even more, hopefully give him a little bit more burst and bounce, which I think is what he needs to become even more deadly offensively. But overall, he's a very skilled player, which I like to see. The better skill you have coming into the league, the more ready you are, in my opinion. So even though the athletic profile is not great for him, I do think he is an NBA ready player. And I think, if he gets a little bit stronger, gets in the gym, gets in the weight room a little bit more frequently, we could see him take a massive stride physically by year 2 of his NBA career. Then we get to my player archetype, and I have him labeled as an instant offense guard. And I don't even think that the defense is as big of a problem as maybe I made it sound out to be. I do think it's a little problematic, but again, team defense is way more important than individual defense. If you have a solid rim protector behind him, I think you could get away with it. And again, he's competitive. It's not like he's shying away or not putting in effort defensively. It's just technique right now. So for me with Besson, I think the instant offense heavily outweighs any defensive inefficiencies or incapabilities he has. And I think he comes into the NBA as a really effective and important player rather quickly into his career. So instant offense guard is the title I gave him here. And then the draft range. Pick 10 to pick 30 is where I think he'll ultimately go. As of right now, the draft experts are labeling him as exclusively a second-round pick. I don't see it. They did the same thing last year with Josh Giddey until closer to the end. You have a 6'5" combo guard here who, quite frankly, his tape is much better than a lot of other players in this class. He's only 20 years old at the time I'm recording this. Sure, he'll be 21, but that's not much of a huge age gap. 1 or 2 years. Think about Chris Duarte was 23 last year when the Pacers drafted him in the lottery. So I don't think teams are overall massively scared. A lot of people are going to scream for Ochai Agbaji to be a lottery pick or near lottery pick, and he's going to be older than Hugo Besson as well. So I don't think the age is as much of a concern for his draft stock. I think it's a lot about exposure. Does he get enough exposure to be a lottery pick? Probably not, simply because he's playing in the NBL. They just don't get as much exposure as they should. LaMelo Ball, Josh Giddey, they ended up getting it, but they were a little bit taller as well, 6'7" and 6'8" respectively. So their height definitely did assist them in their draft stock, whereas Besson, 6'5", he's big, but not as big as they are, which hurts his draft stock a little bit in terms of how teams will look at him, but I still think he's going to be a first-round pick. And I would take him maybe as high as pick 7. If I'm a team really craving offensive, flexibility and help, I would really consider it. It depends on what's on the board for me. It depends on what I need. He's not 7th on my big board, but depending on fit and situation, I would really strongly consider it. Maybe a team like the Knicks, who really badly need offensive help in the half court. Besson could be instant offense for you. So, you could think about it. Probably they won't do that simply because of how much Tom Thibodeau prefers defensive players. But I think if he goes any lower than 20, it's a massive steal. And I've actually seen someone deem him as the French Tyler Hero. And I thought that was actually an intriguing comparison. I've always looked at him more as Duncan Robinson plus, where he's, not the free version of Duncan Robinson, where he's a little bit more skilled, a little bit further in his development. Duncan Robinson coming out of Michigan was purely a shooter, whereas Hugo Besson at this point is way more advanced in what he can do with the ball in his hands. And I think he's going to be a player that is really productive in the NBA. If this guy goes in the second round, I'm telling you, it's purely because of exposure. I'm telling you right now, I watch more film and I watch more tape on these players than any other NBA GM. I watch way more Hugo Besson than any other GM will. And I think that he's a player who, if he goes after pick 20, that's a huge steal for a team. I think even if he goes like 18th to a team like Indiana or San Antonio, there's a lot of upside here for a team like that. So for me, I really love Hugo Besson. I think he's going to be a phenomenal pickup for whichever team drafts him. And I know the cool thing is to say defense is what wins. You need offense. In today's league, you need offense, especially for an 82-game regular season. You need someone like Hugo Besson, and I think he's going to be a phenomenal addition. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe as well if you're new. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to comment which NBA draft prospect for the 2022 class you'd like to see next. I do have some more planned as well, so we're going to try and get through it. There were some comments on the Ron Harper Jr. one as well, so we're going to go back and probably hit one of those as well. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. Again, if you did, leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.